And of course, if we take this whole idea of interbeing, interconnectedness seriously, then we are but fruit bodies in the mycelial network of a planetary living being. We pop up and we become fertilizer again. And but we are fundamentally interconnected in the sense that whatever the way we show up is informative about the state of the system. And if the whole system is ailing right now, in the sense of the multiple, people like to call it the polycrisis, I don't really like that term, it's not surprising that something is moving in us. It's not surprising that things can be a bit overwhelming and stressful. And like it helped me at that point to realize that in many ways what was playing out in my own life was possibly also a dynamic reflection of the state of the planet. I've somehow found myself in this weird situation that I get invited as a voice of hope. Mm. But then as I saw the co-option that is going on with the regenerative space as well into too much of a voice of hope and basically yet another predatory delay tactic of large business to continue doing what they're doing, another capturing a term into, we're the big consultancies and we know about this now and talk to us because you've always talked to us. I just suddenly felt a strong need to actually be a voice of the impeding and present collapse around us. And now that I've come out of all of that by actually recognizing that I did have a depression and taking steps to work with that, and I feel a lot better, instantaneously felt better as soon as I realized it. Like it's an interesting thing. I like talking about it publicly because I think a lot of people still stigmatize depression. Yeah. I didn't feel like what I have is a mental illness, but a depression is real for many people, and I don't know whether I would call it an illness. It's a manifestation of being in tune with what's actually going on. You could even say, if you're aware of where we're at as human beings and life on this planet, in any shape of a systemic understanding of the dynamics we're now committed to, if you're not depressed, you're not paying attention. I mean, and then you have to just accept that and work with that and understand that these moments of profound darkness and hopelessness to some extent will be with us over and over and over again. And actually, they've been with us probably on our journey in the past as well. But I do feel like I've come to a point where I'm more at peace with the fact that we all had a privileged life, everybody on this call, some more than others. And we have this unique opportunity to do what we can do to celebrate what is still beautiful, to celebrate what is still lovable, to fan the embers of how loving, caring, nurturing, regenerating, restoring shows up in the places that we live in the communities, in the businesses, and in our walk of daily life. And for me, that is the big flip and the big highlight when people still sell regenerative this, that, and the other as a future utopia. And I think that's when we lose it. Then that's when we jump exactly on the same bandwagon as whatever circular, sustainable, blah, blah, blah. It has to start with that regeneration is a fundamental core process of life itself. It has to start with recognizing that even if now it looks sometimes like that some of us could be interpreted as a cancer on the planet, we have to highlight that it's not all of us, it's never been all of us, it's always been a smaller proportion of humanity that has caused the damage. But we also have to highlight that biologically, ecologically, from life science perspective, we would not be sitting here if our ancestors had not been careful expressions of place in the ecosystems they inhabited and had nurtured them into higher shapes, higher forms of abundance, diversity, and productivity. Meaning all our indigenous to life, indigenous ancestry is an ancestry of regenerative cultures in most places. Of course, we have examples where people outlive their resource base and so on and so forth, but overall, we have far more evidence that for the long journey of humanity, we have been careful gardeners of the ecosystems. And so for me, what I'm in this darkness or this accepting how ridiculous most attempts actually are to create grand scale solutions to our problem, climate, and this, that, and the other. We actually need to accept how fundamentally our future is not going to be like the present, and how so much that we take for granted with regard to availability of energy and materials is simply not realistic, which means that it puts us into a hugely important phase in humanity. We now have either 10, 15 years of spending and investing into large-scale structures and globalized thinking that ultimately will collapse under the pressure of what's coming, or we use the money and resources that we still have to deploy to build redundancy and resilience into the system at local and regional scale. So by coming home to place, by coming home to region, and enabling the people in each place and region to have the capacity to meet uncertainty after calamity. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to train. And we also need to build the basic provisioning resource infrastructure at local and regional scale to make it easier for people everywhere in every bioregion of the planet to meet their needs more locally and regionally. But in order to do that well, and do it in a way that we can salvage some of this wonderful connective technology like we're using right now, we also need to have a nuanced conversation that it's not a radical ultra localization. It needs to be supported by a global support structure. Mm-hmm. But that involves political redesign on the principle of subsidiarity, but it also involves industrial redesign where all the mining and large processing that does need to continue to some extent to provide us with survival technologies or communications and learning technologies needs to be there to enable people in local and regional situations to live a better life. But the danger that I see is that if we don't start by a radical reality check, we're going to waste the time, energy, and resources for the next 10 years building structures that are simply not supportable in the long run. How do we get that through business? Even in the regenerative business conversation, there is still this kind of, okay, yeah, we'll be more patient and we create more benefits, but what's the ROI in the end? Like if we still talk about return on investment, we still don't get that it's the entire superstructure where this return on investment takes place is part of the degenerative exponential growth system that is running us over the cliff. So the best return is return in social cohesion, in regional and local levels of redundancy with core provisioning structure of energy, water, transport, all of that. And if you want to be in business, then create businesses that support that transformation.